I'll repeat once again. So in your application, if you have a requirement of displaying some web pages, then we use a component called what? A WebView component we use. Let me show practically where exactly we use this WebView component. Okay. Let me show exactly where we use this a WebView component in our Android applications. In my phone, there is an app called MobiQuick is application. There is an app called what? MobiQuick is application. Okay. Let's select this MobiQuick application. It's a pure Android native application. It's what? A pure Android native application. Okay. For example, I want to add some money. I want to add to this wallet. All these are the buttons. This recharge, transfer. All these are the buttons. Now I want to add some money. I want to add to this wallet. So there is a button called add money is a button. There is a button called what? Add money is a button. So once we click this add money button, next we got this screen we got. This is also Android native user interface. This is also what? Android native user interface. For example, I want to add the money 100 rupees I want to add. I selected 100 I selected and select this continue button. Select what? Continue button. Then after that I got some the saved cards list I got. These are all the cards I stored in this MobiKick application. So from which card you want to pay the money, select that card, and even this is also the Android user interface. Once if you select this card, once if you select, you have to enter your CVV number. You have to enter. You have to enter what? The CVV number you have to enter. Let's enter the CVV number. I entered my card number. I entered, and I entered my CVV number also. I entered. Next, after that, there is an option called Pay Now. After that, there is an option called what? Pay Now button is there, right? So once if you click this Pay Now button, once if you click the Pay Now button, the next screen you will get, right? The next screen you will get, that is not an Android user interface. The next screen we are getting here, the next screen we are getting in the back. It's loading still. Here I got one page I got, right? This screen is not an Android user interface. This screen is what? It's not an Android user interface. If you want to see here, you can find easily. You can find here. This scroll support meaning the entire page is scrolling here. This is not the Android user interface. Remember this screen, this Mastercard secured code HDFC Bank. Remember this screen. Okay, this is one application. What is the application? MobiQuick is the application. Okay, I'm closing this MobiQuick application. I'm showing. I'm closing. I'm closing the MobiQuick application. I'm closing. I'm closing the application. I closed. There is one more app in my phone called Swiggy. Is one app is there? Online food delivery app called Swiggy. Or let's take one more app in my phone called Ola Money is another app. What is another application name? Ola Money. Even if you take this Ola Money app also, this is all the Android native user interface. It's all completely Android native user interface. I open the Ola application I opened. Maybe it's still loading here. In my phone, I'm opening this Ola Money application I'm opening. It won't take this much time, but I don't know. Let's try with any other application like MobiQuick phishing. Let's try one more time with this Ola only. Let's take Uber. My phone, there is an app called Uber app, is there? Okay. Maybe because of internet is slow, that's why it's not loading the page. Basically, the requirement of displaying that particular web application is nothing but I shown in the MobiQuick application, right? The entire app is the Android pure native user interface. But whenever you have a requirement of payment gateway, it is shown one HTML page because the particular banking websites will allow the user to enter the card number, CVV number, what is the money and all. But it will not give the application, it will not give the permissions to the application to store the secret code and PIN number. Because if you store that data, so we stored all the data with the application like card number, CVV number, what is the PIN number. We stored the entire data we stored in the application. That's why the particular banking websites will not allow the user to give the data to the applications. If you have a requirement of payment gateway, we had to call that particular application. We had to call, and we had to display that particular web page. We had to display. That is one example I shown here. So we'll get a requirement. We'll get in our applications to display web pages. Okay. The syntax of this WebView component is nothing but we had to create a UI component called a WebView component. Had to create. We had to create a UI component called what? WebView is a UI component. So we had to get the WebView component, we had to get into Java code, we had to get. Now is it clear? So now here, first in the XML file, we had to create a UI component, we had to create called WebView component, we had to create. So WebView. So we had to configure some ID, we had to configure for this attribute, Android colon ID is equals to WebView, and we had to specify the width and height of that particular UI component. We had to specify. We had to specify what? The width and height of that particular UI component. We had to specify. This is in the XML file. First, we had to create a UI component. We had to create in the XML file. We had to create. Next, we had to get the component. We had to get into Java code. We had to get. Next, we had to get the component. We had to get into Java code. We had to get. WebView is equals to WebView of. There is a method called findVyId is a method. WebView is equals to what? WebView of findVyId is a method. Specify the ID of that particular component. Specify the ID of that particular component. r.id.webview is the ID of that particular UI component. Okay, get the WebView component into the activity code we have to get. So next thing is nothing but WebView dot. There is a method called load URL is a method. WebView dot load URL is a method. Specify the URL address here. Specify the URL address. WebView dot load URL. Specify the URL address. what is the web page you want to display. Okay. Next, by using WebView component, we can perform four operations. We can perform by using WebView. We can perform four operations. We can perform by using the WebView component. First thing is nothing but we can call the browser. We can call. First thing is what we can call the browser. We can call. Second thing is nothing but we can integrate the browser in our application. We can call the browser. Second thing is nothing but we can integrate the browser. We can integrate in our application. Third thing is nothing but we can display .html files. We can display. Fourth thing is nothing but we can provide a communication between. We can provide a communication between. We can provide a communication between HTML user interface and Android activity. The fourth step is most important. As per my assumption, the future development is based on the fourth step. We can provide a communication between the HTML user interface and Android activity. We can provide a communication between what? The HTML user interface and Android activity. These four operations we can perform by using the WebView component. Call the browser, integrate the browser in our application, display the HTML files, display .html files. Fourth thing is nothing but we can provide a communication we can provide between the HTML user interface and Android activity. We can provide a communication between the HTML user interface and Android activity. So these four operations we can perform by using the WebView component. Okay, these four operations we can perform what? By using the WebView component. So we'll create a simple application. We'll create for demonstrating this WebView component. We'll create a simple application. We'll create. So my requirement is. So in this example also, we'll use a weight properties. We'll use. So if you don't understand the weight property in the last class, so try to understand the today's session. Okay. So my requirement is I want to create a simple application. I want to create. Here I want to create one text box. I want to create here. I want to give an option to the user to enter a text box. Enter URL here. User can enter any URL. User can enter in the text box. User can enter any URL. User can enter in the text box. And whenever user clicks the go button, here I want to create one button. I want to create called go is a button. Okay. Whenever user clicks the go button, that particular web page, whatever the user is given here, that particular web page we want to display on WebView component. That particular web page you want to display on a WebView component. We want to display that particular web page. What is this UI component? Say that particular web page I want to display on a WebView component. I want to display. And end of the screen, in the bottom of the screen, I want to create few UI components. I want to create. In the bottom of the screen, I want to create few controls. I want to create. Here I want to create total 4 buttons. I want to create like this. The same equivalent sizes. I want to create what? 4 buttons I want to create here. I want to create 4 buttons. So one is user can enter any URL. User can enter in the text box. Whenever user clicks the go button, display that particular web page on a WebView component. That is the first thing. And frequently I will use some websites like facebook.com. Okay. Next google.com. So frequently I use some websites I use. So facebook.com, next google.com. Like I want to display some web pages I want to display here. So Facebook, Google, YouTube. Okay. So frequently I use some websites I use. So I don't want to type every time. I don't want to type in the URL. So whenever user clicks the Facebook button, I want to display a Facebook page. Google button, Google page. YouTube button. And the last thing is nothing but HTML. So we'll see what is the logic. We'll create our own HTML file. We'll create. We will create our own HTML file, we'll create, and we'll see how to display that HTML file on a WebView component. Okay, this is my requirement. I want to display the user interface. I want to display in this format. I want to display the user interface. I want to display the user interface. I want to display in this format. I want to display the user interface. Okay, so now here we are going to use a UI group called, linear layout we use first. First we'll take the main UI group as linear layout. Inside the linear layout for this type of user interface, so once again we'll create one more UI group called what? A linear layout. But the orientation for this one is horizontal. Orientation for this one is what? It's a horizontal is the orientation. For the main UI group we'll specify the orientation as what? Vertical will specify for the main orientation. This is 0.8. The width, weight property for this one is 0.8 is a weight, and 0.2 is a weight for this go button. 0.2, and 80% of the screen in the entire height I want to occupy for this WebView component, 0.8. And again for this bottom I want to create four components I want to create, and here also I'll apply the weight for this one is 0.1 is a weight. Let's see here, we'll see how to design the user interface by applying the weight properties. Okay, let's create a project. Okay, let's create a project. Let's start a new Android Studio project. Specify the project name. Specify the project name. Let's take my project name is Webview test is a project name. I'm creating a project called what? Webview test is a project name. Okay, next. So take an empty activity, finish. So meanwhile, it will take some time to load. Meanwhile, we'll take all these images we'll collect. We need a search, go button we required. We required a Facebook, link, Google, YouTube, and HTML. So these UI components we required. So already downloaded few images already downloaded. I use those images I use. One is the Facebook icon we required. And one more thing is this Google icon we required. Search logo we required. And we required this HTML logo also we required. This HTML logo also we required. Facebook, Google, search, and this HTML. Now for YouTube, temporarily we'll take this logo. This image this image will use as a YouTube logo. Okay. Okay, copied the images I copied. Now we'll place all these images. We'll place into the drawable folder. We'll place the resource folder, drawable folder. We'll place all these files. We'll place into the drawable folder. We'll place all the files. We'll place into which folder? Into the drawable folder. We'll place all the files. Okay. Now in our activity XML file, the main UI group will take as what? Linear layout will take the main UI group. We'll take the main UI group as linear layout. Let's replace this relative layout with a UI group called linear layout. We don't require this tools attribute, we don't require. We require the width and height, and remaining all these attributes you don't require. If you want, you can remove all these attributes, you can remove. Additionally, for linear layout, we have to apply one more attribute you have to apply, that is orientation, vertical. Okay. Now inside this linear layout, first we created this. We created the main UI group we created. Now inside the main UI group, we want to create one linear layout component we want to create. We want to create what? A linear layout linear layout component I want to create. So I want to specify the width and height for this. For this we want to create a linear layout, and orientation will apply as what? Horizontal is the orientation will apply for this. Okay. Now inside this linear layout, we'll create one more linear layout we'll create. Width is match parent, occupy the entire screen, but height make it 0 dp, because in place of height I want to apply the weight property. I want to apply weight is equals to 0.1, meaning in the device entire screen height, I want to occupy what? 10% of the screen I want to occupy. Now inside this linear layout, so we had to apply orientation, we had to apply for this. We had to apply the orientation, we had to apply. Orientation is equals to what? Horizontal is a orientation. Orientation is specified as horizontal. Now inside this linear layout, first I want to create one text box. I want to create edit text. First make it 0 dp, because the width I want to apply, the weight property I want to apply, and height is equals to wrap content, or you can specify match parent. And what is the parent for this edit text? It's going to occupy that much of space. What is the parent for this edit text? Linear layout, right? Now here let's apply the weight property. Weight is equals to 0.8 or 0.9. 90% of the screen I want to occupy for this edit text. Let's configure the hint attribute. Hint is nothing but enter URL. Next, after this edit text button, for displaying the images, there is a UI component called image view component is available. For displaying the images, there is a UI component called what? Image view component is available. So first we'll make it width is equals to 0 dp. First we'll make it what? Width is equals to 0 dp, and height is specified as match parent. Height is specified as match parent. Specify the source here. src is equals to add drawable. Specify which image you want to display. Which image you want to display? That home logo is there, right? Search logo. But we want to apply the weight property, you have to apply, right? Weight is equals to 0.1 is a weight. Meaning the first thing is completed. We get a linear layout we created. 90% of the screen I want to occupy for this edit text component, and 10% of the screen I want to occupy for this search button. Okay. Next. Below this linear layout, 80% of the screen I want to occupy the Webview component. I want to create the 80% of the screen. Width is match parent. Make it height is equals to 0 dp. In place of height, I want to apply the weight property. I want to apply. In place of height, I want to apply what? Weight property. Weight is equals to 0.8 is the, and we require this component into Java code. Let's configure the ID for this. Webview 1 is the ID I configured. So I created a linear layout. I created the main linear layout. Then after that I created what? One Webview component I created. Then below of the Webview component, again we'll create one more linear layout. We'll create. Match parent. Height is equals to 0 dp. In place of height, let us apply the weight property. Weight is equals to 0.1 is a weight. Now inside this linear layout, orientation is horizontal is the orientation. Now inside this linear layout, I want to create 4 UI components I want to create with the same sizes. 4 UI components I want to create with the same size. I want to create what? 4 components I want to create with the same size. So here inside this linear layout, I want to create 4 image view components. I want to create. Let's create image view. Width, make it 0 dB. In place of width, we want to apply the weight property. We want to apply, and height is equals to match parent. Height is equals to match parent. Weight is equals to 0.25 is the weight. Weight is equals to 0.25. Let's specify the image. What is the image you want to display? Head drawable. Specify the image name. I want to display this Facebook logo. I want to display icon. So I want to create total 4 image view components. I want to create. One is a Facebook logo. Second thing is Google. Facebook, Google. Okay, YouTube logo. And the last thing is what? HTML. Okay, so now we are done with the UI. Let's see the output now. Select this design. You'll get the XML. We'll show you how it will display. Okay, enter URL. We get a search button, Facebook, Google, and the YouTube button, and the HTML button. So the UI part we created. We created the UI part we created. Now we had to configure the click event. We had to configure for all these buttons. For this search button, for Facebook, Google, and this YouTube, HTML. For all these buttons, we had to configure the click event. We had to configure. So in our activity XML only, for all these image view components, we'll configure the click event. We'll configure the ID. We'll configure first. Search is ID I configured. Search. And let's specify the on-click attribute. Hey, 1 second. So total we created five image view components we created, right? I'm configuring the IDs I'm configuring, as well as I'm configuring the click event also I'm configuring. ID is equals to Google, YouTube, and on click is equals to test. Method name is same. If you click any image view component, image button, we are calling the same method. We are calling called test method. HTML. So once if you see the design here, if you select this design, you will get the, see how it will show the preview. So we configured the click event we configured. What is the method name we specified? Test is a method name we specified. We specified a method name what? Test is the method name we specified. Okay, we configured the IDs we configured for all these image view components. So let's create a method in the main activity class. Here, let's create a method. Public void test is a method which is taking the view object as a input. Test is a method which is taking the view object as a input. Okay, in this test method, how we'll identify here, because we configured the click event we configured for all these image view components, we specified the same method name we specified. Test is a method name we specified. Test. If you click any one of these 5 image view components, we configured the same method name we configured, that is nothing but test. So how you'll identify here whether you got a request from a search button or Facebook button or Google button? How you'll recognize you got a request from which button? Simple. One of the input parameter for this test method is nothing but the view object. One of the input parameter for this test method is nothing but what? So view object is the input parameter. This view object contains the id. This view object contains what? Id. Let's take a switch case, because we are having multiple conditions. We are having the multiple conditions. Switch v dot get id is a method, so that you'll get the id of that particular UI component. So that you'll get what? The id of that particular UI component. So in this switch case, let's configure the IDs here. Case r.id dot, if this is from search button, let's break it. And case r.id dot, this is from Facebook. r.id dot search Facebook, Google, case.r.id dot Facebook, Google, search Facebook, Google, and if it is from YouTube, r.id.html. If this is from HTML button. Okay, so we added multiple switch conditions. We added what? Multiple switch case conditions we added here. If the request from search button, if the request from search button, we had to display that particular, whatever the user is given the URL, we had to take that URL, and we had to display that web page. Whatever the user is given in this particular URL, that web page we had to display on the WebView component. Okay, so first what we'll do is, in the XML file, in our activity XML file, we created a UI component called WebView component. We had to create. In the activity XML file, we had to create a UI component called what? WebView component. We had to create and get that WebView component into your activity on create method. WebView is equals to WebView find UI ID r.id dot WebView is a method, so that you'll get the WebView component will get into your activity class. You'll get. Okay. Now here, whenever user select the search button, so first we had to get the URL. We had to get the URL. We had to get from that particular text box. Okay. So here in the XML file, we created a UI component. We created, right, called edit text component. Get that particular edit text component into your activity class. Edit text et1 is equals to edit text. There is a method called find UI ID is a method. What is the method name? Find UI ID is a method. We had to specify the ID of that particular UI component. We had to specify the ID of that particular UI component. r.id dot. In the XML file, we create UI component, right, called edit text. We have not configured the ID. We have not configured for this edit text component. So let's configure the ID for this. Edit text component et1. Edit text is equals to edit text of find UI ID r.id dot et1. Get the edit text component into your particular Java class. Okay. Next, WebView dot, there is a method called load URL is a method. What is the method name? WebView dot load URL is a method. So where the URL is available? In the edit text box, right? So write et1 dot get text dot toString. So I want to display a web page. I want to display on the WebView component. Which web page you want to display on the WebView component? So user is going to give that URL in the first text box, et1 dot get text dot toString. Okay, so here we'll add a permission in the manifest.xml, because we required the internet permission we required. We required the internet permission we required for displaying the web page. Let's open the manifest.xml, Android manifest.xml. Here we had to add a permission. We had to call here users permission Android colon name is equals to internet. So we had to add this internet permission. We had to add in manifest.xml file. Okay, let's run the application. I want to install the app I want to install in Samsung device I want to install, or emulator, any device you can take. Okay. So we added the permission, we added internet permission. Whenever user select that search button, we are displaying that particular web page, we are displaying on a web view component, we are displaying. It's loading still. Okay. So app is installed. You know, I don't know whether it's visible to you or not. Uh, there are bottom controls also available. This Facebook, Google, this YouTube button, and the HTML button. Okay. Now let's see here. We written the logic for this first one. Search button, we written the logic. You can give any URL you can give, but once if you are giving a URL, it's mandatory to add HTTP. It's mandatory to add this HTTP colon 2 forward slashes, because now here we are creating our own browser kind of thing we are creating. If you take Chrome or Safari, if you take these browsers, if you take, even if you don't add this HTTP, automatically the browser will add that HTTP statement. But here we are creating our own browser kind of thing we are creating. So by default, the WebView will not add that HTTP statement. It will not add. So it's mandatory to give this HTTP. Specify what is the web page you want to display. I want to display the Google page. I want to display www. Not Google. I want to display this particular web page. I want to display lexiconinfotech.com. I want to display this particular web page. I want to display lexiconinfotech.com. Click on this search button. So once we click on this search button, the device is having internet connection. To display that particular web page, it will display on a WebView component. I'll do one thing. I'll install the app. I'll install in my phone. I'll install. Maybe here some problem with the emulator internet connection. I'll show the application. I'll show you in my phone. I'll show you. Install the app in Samsung device. So now the app is installed in my phone. App is installed. This is a screen phone preview. Let's give the URL address here. Which web page you want to display. Let's specify that particular web page. 2 forward slashes. Specify the URL here. What is the URL you want to display? Okay, I given some particular web page I given, and once if you click on this search button, if we click on the search button, it will load that particular web page. It will load on the web view component. See here, I selected the search button. I selected. So maybe it will take. We'll click on the search button. We'll click. Yeah, it's loading that particular web page. It is loading here. What are the URL we given in this text box? What are the URL we given in the text box? It is loading that particular web page. It is loading on the web view component. Whatever the URL will be given in the text box. It is loading that particular web page. It is loading on the WebView component. It is loading but that particular web page. Okay. Next. So for example, same logic will apply for this Facebook and Google also. For example, when user clicks the Facebook button, webview.load URL of I want to display the Facebook page. I want to display on WebView component. HTTP colon 2// www.facebook.com. HTML is different. We'll discuss that HTML part. We'll discuss. So when user select the Google button, I want to display Google page. I want to display. When user select the YouTube button, I want to display what? YouTube page. I want to display. Facebook, Google, and YouTube. Let's run the application now. So you can give your own input, and once if you click the search button, it will display that particular web page. It will display on a WebView component. Okay, now the app is installed. If you click on this Facebook button, if you click the Facebook button, it will display the Facebook page. It will display on the WebView component. But see here, it is not displaying that particular page. It is not displaying on the WebView component. It is navigating to browser. It is navigating. Observe here. Once if you click the Google button, see it is asking to use a browser. Facebook, Google, it is asking what? It is asking to navigate that particular web page using the browser. But then what is the purpose of? What is the purpose of creating the WebView component? See, if I select the YouTube, YouTube button, it is asking you to navigate to any one of these applications. Then what is the purpose of creating the WebView component in our application? Okay, so we'll see the second one. By using WebView component, you can perform 4 operations. You can perform, right? What are the 4 things? First thing is you can call the browser. That's what we discussed up to now. Now the second thing we'll discuss how to integrate the browser in our application. Second thing is what? How to integrate the browser in our application. Okay. So if you want to integrate the browser, in our application, the WebView object there is a method called set WebView client is a method. WebView object dot what is the method name? Set WebView client is a method. WebView object dot set WebView client is a method. Here we had to specify the object of WebView client class object. Had to specify WebView dot set WebView client is a method. For this WebView client method, we had to specify the object of WebView client class object. Had to specify. That's it. Now once if you set this WebView client object, it will not navigate to browser. It will not navigate that particular web page. It will display on the WebView component only. It will display. Okay, so here in your activity XML file, Java code, after getting the WebView component into your Java code, we had to use this method. That is WebView dot. There is a method called what? Set WebView client is a method. What is the method name? Set WebView client is a method. For this WebView client method, we had to specify the object of WebView client object. Had to specify. Just specify the object of WebView client class. That's it. So once if you set this object, now let's see what will happen. Run the application. Now it will not navigate to the browser. It will not navigate. Earlier it is navigating to the browser, but now it will not navigate to browser. It will not navigate. It will display that particular web page. It will display on the WebView component. It will display. If you want to see here, if you click on the Facebook button, see earlier it is navigated to browser, right? Earlier it is navigated to browser, it is navigated, but now that particular web page is displayed in our Android application. It is displayed. And if you click on the Google button, it will display Google page. It will display. Earlier it is navigating to browser, it is navigating. Earlier it is navigating to browser, it is navigating, but now the page is displayed on the web view itself. But if you see here, if you click on this Facebook button, see, as a developer, we know that we selected the Facebook button, we selected, it will take some time to load. But a normal user don't know, right? What is the functionality he will expect? Whenever we click a Facebook button, immediately the page has to display. Immediately, the page has to display on the WebView component. See here, following are the major methods in the WebView client class. So once if you set the WebView client object, the web page will be displayed on the WebView component. And next, following are the major methods in the WebView client class. Following are the major methods in WebView. Following are the major methods in WebView client class. Following are the major methods in WebView client class. There are three major methods are there. One is onPreExecute is one method. OnPreExecute is one method. One second, one second. OnPageStarted is one method. OnPageStarted is one method. These are the major methods in the WebView client class. Here we specify the object of WebView client, right? There are three major methods in the WebView client class. One is onPageStarted is one method. Should override URL loading method. Should override URL loading is another method. OnPageStarted should override URL loading method. Should override URL loading method. Another thing is onPageFinished is another method. What is another method? OnPageFinished is another method. OnPageFinished is the another method. These are the three major methods in the WebView client class. These are the three major methods in the WebView client class. OnPageStarted, should override URL loading, and OnPageFinished. These are the three major methods in the WebView client class. Now here, for this WebView component, we specified the object of WebView client class object we specified, right? We specified the object of what? WebView client class object we specified. Okay. So now here, inside the WebView client, so here we have to specify the object of WebView client object we specified. Now there are three major methods in the WebView client class. What are the three major methods? OnPageStarted, should override URL loading, and OnPageFinished. These are the three major methods. These are the three major methods inside the WebView client class. Okay, so we had to override these three methods. We had to override. You know, the names itself is describing before loading any particular web page. Before loading any particular web page, it's going to call onPageStarted method. At the time of loading the particular web page, it's going to call should override URL loading method. Once the page loading process is done, it's going to call the onPageFinished methods. So now here, after this WebView client, so open this flower bracket. After this WebView client, the WebView client object, open the flower bracket and just give an enter. Now we are inside which class? Now we are inside the WebView client class. We are inside the WebView client class. Okay, in this WebView client class, there are three major methods are there. What are the three major methods? One is onPageStarted is one method. One is onPageStarted. Second thing is nothing but should override URL loading is another method. Should override URL loading is another method. Third thing is nothing but onPageFinished is another method. What is the third method name? On page finished is another method. These are the three major methods in the WebView client class. These are the three major methods in the WebView client class. Before loading any particular web page, it's going to call the on page started method. At the time of loading the web page, it's going to call should override URL loading method. Once the page loading process is completed, it's going to call the on page finished method is going to call. Now, just for demonstration, what we'll do is we'll display a toast message will display here. When the page loading is started, we'll display toast message will display. Just for demonstration, we are displaying a toast message here. But in the industry, the requirement may be different. Like before loading any web page, you want to do some pre-execution you want to do, or after loading the web page, you want to do some post-execution you want to do. Like we'll write that logic in the on page started and on page finished method. And do you want to know which page it is loading right now? If you want to get that information, we have to use this should override URL loading method. So get application context is first parameter. Second parameter specify the message. For example, page loading is started is a message I'm displaying. Length underscore long dot show is a method. Okay. Now when the page loading is started, it's going to call the on page started method, right? We're displaying a toast message. At the time of loading that particular web page, it's going to call should override URL loading method, and it will give you the information like which web page it is loading now. Okay, that URL is there, right? The second parameter is nothing but the URL object. It's going to give you which web page it is loading right now. I'm giving that URL I'm giving here. The second parameter is what? I'm displaying the URL I'm displaying, which website it is loading right now. Okay, the last thing is nothing but last method is nothing but on page finished method. In this on page finished method also I'm writing the logic for displaying the toast message in the double quotes, the on page finished method. So on page finished is the methods. So on page loading is started. At the time of loading the web page, it's going to call should override URL loading. We are displaying that web page URL we are displaying in a toast message. Once the loading process is done, it's going to call the on page finished methods. Let's run the application and we'll see whether really these methods are calling or not. Let's run the app. Now see here, once if you click on this Facebook button, say I'm selecting this Facebook button, I'm selecting. So first it's going to call the on page started method is going to call. Then after that, which web page it is loading, it will give that web page URL. Then after that, it is navigated to one more URL, it is navigated. So again, it's called on page started method, which web page it is loading. And once it is done, it's going to call the on page finished method is going to call. So before loading any particular web page, it's going to call on page started method. The time of loading the data, it's going to call that particular URL. And once the loading process is done, it's going to call the on page finished method is going to call. On page finished. Okay, just for demonstration, we are displaying a toast message we are displaying here. If you want, you can write any logic, you can write like displaying some progress dialog, rotation dialog, like loading message. Once the loading is done, it's going to call the on page finished method. So dismiss that loading dialog. Okay. Okay, Facebook is working fine, Google is working fine, and even if you give any URL, that URL also will display on the WebView component. Now if you click on this YouTube button, if you click here, loading is started. If you click on this YouTube page, if you click, see now here it's showing a message it is showing. Once if you click on that YouTube button, once if you click, it is showing a message it is showing. See what is the message it is showing? Please enable JavaScript on your browser. If you click on this YouTube button once, if you click, it is showing a message is showing. What is the message is showing now? Please enable JavaScript in your on your browser. Meaning, boss, we created a WebView component. We created this WebView component by default. It will not enable the JavaScript as well as the Zoom controls. It will not enable. Explicitly, we had to enable that JavaScript and Zoom controls. We had to enable. Meaning that you can ask me a question why Facebook and Google is loading. Maybe they are not using any JavaScript logic. Maybe they are not using any JavaScript logic in initial screens. That's why directly they displaying the web pages. So here, let's write here by default, WebView will not enable JavaScript and Zoom controls. By default, WebView will not enable JavaScript and Zoom controls. Okay, WebView will not enable JavaScript and Zoom controls. Use the following methods. Use the following methods to enable. Use the following methods to enable JavaScript and Zoom controls. By default, WebView will not enable what? The JavaScript and Zoom controls. If you want to enable that JavaScript and Zoom controls, if you want to enable, we have to use that method. So we have to use WebView dot get settings dot set JavaScript enable is one method. Set JavaScript enable of true. WebView.getSettings.set JavaScript enabled of true. First enable the JavaScript. Then after that we are enabling the Zoom controls also we are enabling. WebView.getSettings.set built-in Zoom controls of true. We are enabling the JavaScript we are enabling as well as we are enabling the Zoom controls also we are enabling. We are enabling what? JavaScript we are enabling as well as we are also enabling what? The Zoom controls also we are enabling. So if you set these methods, if you set, the JavaScript will work as well as the Zoom controls also will work. Okay. So mean here the WebView component, after initializing the WebView component, after getting the WebView component, we have to configure these properties. We have to configure WebView dot get settings dot set JavaScript enable is at true. Set JavaScript enable true and WebView dot get settings dot set built-in Zoom controls of true. Set JavaScript enable true and set built-in Zoom controls of true. Okay, so once if you enable these properties, if you enable, so it will enable the JavaScript as well as Zoom controls also you'll get. Now run the application. Earlier we are getting some exception. We are getting some message in case of YouTube. Now let's see whether it is showing the same message or not. Earlier JavaScript is not enabled. That's why we got the message we got. Now we enable the JavaScript we enable. Okay, so click on this HTML button. Once if you click on the HTML button, so we are not HTML, this YouTube button. Once if you click on the YouTube button, earlier it is shown a message it is shown, but now it will load that particular and the YouTube page it will not now. Okay, now the YouTube page is loaded. Earlier we have not given the permissions for JavaScript. Now we given the permissions for JavaScript, we given the permissions. Now the JavaScript is enabled. Okay, so let's practice up to this. Let's work on up to first these two components, how to display and how to call the browser and how to integrate the browser in our application by using a method called WebView client method. Okay, I'll do one thing.